When introducing young adventurers to Dungeons & Dragons, don't overwhelm your players with all the rules all at once. In fact, before introducing any dice at all, start with practicing role-playing. At the end of this video, I'll show you a method for teaching your littlest adventurers as young as 3 years old how to role-play. But first, what is role-playing in Dungeons & Dragons? Role-playing is one of the core components of the game for both players and dungeon masters. It entails taking on the role of one of the characters in the story and making decisions and speaking from their perspective, according to what you think that character would do and say. Now, unless you and your players are experienced stage actors, role-playing might feel uncomfortable to you at first, and here are some reasons why. First off, it puts you in a vulnerable position. If you are the first one to talk in an angry goblin voice, or care deeply about what your character is doing, showing that character's emotion on your face, you may be afraid that the other people at the table might laugh at you, or just not match your energy and make you feel like you overdid it.
It might also seem silly to pretend to be somebody else. If I'm an elf, does that mean that I have to have pointy ears and long hair? If I'm a dwarf, does that mean I have to pretend to be short? Kids at this developmental stage tend to be egocentric, meaning that they are their characters. The character that they're playing on their sheet is really just a piece of them. And it might feel a little weird to try and pretend to be something that they're not.
Players may not be familiar with the idea of improvising, or they might not feel like they understand their character well enough to know what their character would do and say in the moment, freezing up when it comes to their turn. One common pitfall we see for kid players is not really knowing how to take turns and share the spotlight. Some kid players who are more comfortable with role-playing may just take over the scene and talk for way too long and forget to include the other players at the table, while others are left sitting there silent, not really knowing how to jump in or participate.
Another one is getting anxious about not knowing how to control the outcome. Think of role-playing as a tennis match. You come up with a really good idea for the scene, you ball it up and you send it over to your other player. And then once that idea is out of your hands, you don't know what's going to happen with it. Some kids might feel anxious to start something that they don't know how is going to finish.
And it's important to acknowledge that heavy emphasis on role play is not everybody's preferred style of play, and that's okay. The more that you get to know your players and the more that you talk to them before or after the game to get their perspective, the more you'll understand what style of play they like and be able to include that in the game so that everybody has fun.
This is why we like to play with something called the yes-or method. If you are an improvisational actor, then you've probably heard of yes and. Improv actors will use yes and in a scene to help the scene keep going. So if their scene partner says one thing, they don't say no, they don't try and take it in a different direction. They say, yes, I will go with what you're saying, and I will add on to it. Some kids can't do yes and though, especially those types of kids that can be a little bit more squirrely or the kids that are harder to draw in. That's why we like to call it the yes or method. When you're the adult at the table, you get to be the one that's sort of guiding the energy around that table. And so you can help kids to know what kind of decision they need to make. Maybe a kid wants to just jump off the cliff. Probably not a great idea. But it's also probably not helpful role-playing wise to just say no. So you as the adult can employ yes or. We could jump off the cliff, or we could take this nice ramp down. What do you think is probably the better situation? If you're talking to an innkeeper and one of your players says something like, and we rob the innkeeper, you could be like, yes. Or we could talk to him and then he would be more helpful to us. Yes or doesn't stop the consequences of role-playing, and it doesn't cut kids out of role-playing either. Instead, it gives adults a different tool to help manage what's happening at the table.
If you're seeing some of these signs of hesitancy to role-play, the most important thing you can do as a dungeon master to help is to model what it looks like to role-play confidently.
And a great way to do that is just to be silly. Role-playing is inherently silly, and lots of kids love to be silly. But often, when kids are in spaces with adults, they're not allowed to be silly. Think of school times, think of meal times, even going to the grocery store. Kids have to put a lid on it. Kids have to be serious, be structured for the sake of that space. So if you have kids at your table and you are an adult, they might think that they need to lower their energy and not be silly, which gives you, the adult, the greatest opportunity to be silly. The higher your energy is, the higher their energy will be. If they're reluctant role players, get into it, because once you show them it's a safe thing to do, it's a fun thing to do, it's a silly thing to do, they'll feel more comfortable being silly too. Don't forget to include easy opportunities for reluctant role players. Some kids are natural born role players. They can take a story thread and they can run with it. I'm looking for a dog. Okay, I'm gonna go talk to that goblin over there. I'm gonna talk to the innkeeper. I'm gonna jump into a well and look for Fido. They're gonna be fine. But some kids are still stuck at square one, just asking, how do I do this? So what you can do is give them a list of simple choices based in their character. You're a wizard. Okay, what would a wizard think about this situation? Would they want to use magic or would they want to hide their magic? You can play to other aspects of their character. You're a dwarf? That guy didn't seem like he was being very nice to dwarves. How would you feel about that? When you can boil role-playing down to a couple of simple choices, it helps gives kids the confidence to continue taking those choices and running with them.
Find a way to include your players' special interests at the table in order to increase their engagement. If they really like pirates or mermaids or superheroes or Paw Patrol, you can find a way to introduce similar characters and vibes at the table in a way that really excites and engages their imagination. Give your players space and prompts to further develop their character backstories. Then take the information that they've shared with you and incorporate it into the game so it feels like a special moment just for their character.
One of the big questions in role-playing is, do you need to do voices? Now, most of us are not classically trained theater actors. If you are, congratulations. But if you aren't, it can feel really intimidating to do role-playing if you can't do different accents, like, say, British. To be or not to be, that is the question. Which is often used in high fantasy, or even something more modern. Belinda, I am coming to the cottage. Because the bigger productions like that sense of drama. But here's a secret. You don't have to do voices during role-playing. It's okay. If every single one of your characters sounds exactly the same, that's totally fine. You can differentiate between the characters by just saying, this character says, and then say what they need to say. That gives kids the permission to just say what they need to say without having to worry about if they sound too silly or if they can't do a voice. And I bet you can do more voices than you think you can. For instance, do you have a pet? And do you give your pet voices?
My name is Roxas, and I am the best pet. I am the best puppy, and this is my voice. Hello.
Even simple things like making your voice high or making your voice low can help add to the drama and the ambiance and give kids permission to do things like that too, to show them that role-playing is silly and they can be silly with it.
It's also important for the DM to know when it's time to back off. Remember, D&D is a shared storytelling game, not a one-person stand-up show. Now, if your players have vastly different interest levels in role-playing, here are some things that you as the DM can do to help balance that out.
For instance, some kids like to talk, and that's okay. We love our talkative kids. They're the ones that help us make role-playing easy. And sometimes those talkative kids can spill over into becoming, shall we say, the assistant DM. If that happens, it's okay to remind the entire table, and sometimes a specific player, who the players are and who the DM is. Only one person at the table can adjudicate the rules. Only one person at the table can really control the shaping of the story. And when you are able to sort of lay down those ground rules, it frees all of the players, including your talkative players, to just be the character that they have created.
If one player just can't get a word in edgewise, don't be afraid to call on that specific player and prompt them by asking what their character might be doing or thinking in that moment, giving a moment of silence for them to process and consider before responding. If they still don't want to respond and don't seem comfortable, please give them a free pass.
Now you might be thinking, with all of these different play styles, with all of the different kinds of role players that might be at my table, it would probably be best to put together a table of similar personalities. And if that's what you have, that's great. But having a table with all sorts of different play styles can actually enrich the experience for everybody. Don't be afraid to have different kids at the table who have different play styles, different ability levels, because they'll actually help each other engage more, as long as you are doing the work of helping them engage. Kids need to know that it's okay to be unique. It's okay to have your own way of playing. And it's okay to see how your way of playing and somebody else's way of playing meet up and don't meet up. That's the only way we're really going to build community around the table, is when kids and adults, players and DMs are all working together to figure out how we all fit together. So don't forget rule number 1 of the kids table. Treat everybody around the table and in the game with kindness, mercy, and justice. We say that kindness is treating the person across from you as a full person, deserving of the same rights and responsibilities that you have. That one is particularly important for role-playing, because oftentimes some kids will go down the rabbit trail of saying, well, this is what my character would do. It's not that it's mean, it's just that it's in character. And while that might be true, referring them back to that rule of kindness in particular can help the cohesion at your table. It's not always about what your character would do, it's about what your character should do. So don't be afraid to redirect the kids who need to be redirected.
Now for that method I promised you for teaching your littlest adventurers, ages 3 to 5-ish, how to roleplay. It's called a journey story, and this is how it goes. First, invite the child to set the scene. Ask them, where are we going on this journey? What are we bringing with us? And what kind of transportation will we use? Next, the adult introduces a problem that's relevant to the scene the child set. Third, the child comes up with a potential solution to that problem. And fourth, the adult narrates the result. This process is super simple and takes less than 5 minutes. It's easy to do when you're driving in the car or waiting for an appointment. Here's one example.
You want a lollipop? You can get it from Ninja. But first, we want to tell you a story.
Yeah. All right. So Zoe, we are going on a trip. Where are we going?
Mexico.
Mexico. All right. And what are we going to bring with us on our trip to Mexico?
No. We'll go. I clearly forgot. We're going to where Santa lives to have a visit and stay for 20 nights.
All right. So the North Pole is where Santa lives. All right. What are we going to bring with us on our trip to the North Pole?
Our snow PJs and celebrate Christmas.
All right. We're going to bring snow PJs. And how are we going to get to the North Pole all the way from Florida?
We're gonna go on a jet.
On a jet? Ooh, who gets to fly the jet?
A master of a jet.
The pilot?
A pilot.
Okay. So we're on our jet flying to the North Pole.
Wait. You do.
Me? I get to be the pilot?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Pilot Mommy, that's my hat, is flying the jet on our way.
And I said, Mommy, are we there yet?
Not yet. And we're on our way. And then suddenly I say, oh no, look below us. I see some baby reindeer that are separated from their mommies and daddies.
I can see the mommy.
You see the mommy. How can we help them find each other? They're lost in the snowstorm.
And guess what?
What?
I am using my telescopes to see a mommy. I can't see. I can see a. I actually can't see a mommy, but I can see below us a baby, and now I can see a mommy by Santa's cottage.
Okay, so what should we do to help the baby and the mommy find each other?
We should fly down and pick them up to their parents, and that's where Santa's house will be.
Okay, so we fly down and we tell the baby, what do we say to the baby?
Hold on. You don't speak animal. You like, oh, I don't speak animal language.
I don't speak animal language.
Don't
What do we do?
worry. I have a special necklace that went inside of me, so now I can understand animals.
Okay, so what do you and the baby reindeer say to each other?
I say, come with us. We know where your mommy is. I said, okay.
So are we gonna fly on the jet the rest of the way to the mommy, or are we gonna walk through the snow, or what are we gonna do?
We're gone. Since it's really cold, our engines go cold, so we had to walk.
We had to walk. Is it really cold?
Yeah.
Should we maybe change into our snow PJs so we can be warmer?
No, we walk close just in case there will happen.
Oh, good.
For everybody.
Okay, so we walk to the North Pole, and what happens when the baby and the mommy see each other?
They're so happy they start running to each other, but a snowstorm made it hard for them to see each other still.
Yeah, that's how they got lost, but they're so happy to see each other. And how does that make you feel? Happy. And then Santa comes out and he goes, ho, ho, ho. Very good job, Zoe. Thank you for saving the lost baby reindeer. It's not Christmas yet, but I'm going to let you have a present early because you did such a good job. And he gives you a wrapped box. And what's inside? Pokemon cards. I love it. And that's the end of our journey story.
I hope that was helpful. To learn more about playing D&D with kids, check out the other videos in this series or watch our actual play campaign with kid players at the table. Because when kids are at the table, everyone wins.
Have fun and don't forget to go at Ninja and get a lollipop.
Bye-bye.